Imagine rows of lofty palm trees that seem to stretch endlessly toward the horizon, every trunk crowned with a canopy of lush fronds and heavy clusters of bright orange fruit. At a quick glance, it could be mistaken for a carefully arranged forest. But take a few steps closer, and you'll see the precision of an industrial operation on a colossal scale. Workers maneuver long poles with razor-sharp blades to slice down fruit bunches that weigh as much as a school backpack. Towering trucks rumble past, carrying these spiky clusters toward processing mills that roar day and night. This is the modern landscape of palm oil production, a global enterprise weaving itself into countless everyday items while sparking fierce debates about deforestation, labor exploitation, and how far humanity will go to feed its desires for cheap, versatile commodities. The scale alone is enough to leave anyone in awe. In some plantations, you can stand in one spot, spin around, and see nothing but orderly grids of palms for miles on end. The industry's leaders often tout staggering numbers. Per hectare, oil palm trees can produce more oil than soybean, rapeseed, or sunflower fields, which is precisely why palm oil has become the go-to choice for manufacturers. On paper, it sounds efficient. In practice, however, critics argue that this efficiency comes at a far steeper cost. These trees replaced biodiverse rainforests that once echoed with the calls of orangutans and hornbills, leaving behind an ecosystem stripped of its original complexity. Confrontations around this transformation are so intense that certain environmental groups have labeled it the global crisis, one that pits modern agriculture against the last refuges of wildlife in Southeast Asia and beyond. Peeking behind the scenes, you'll find an intricate supply chain that spans entire continents. After harvesters cut down fruit bunches, they need to rush them to mills as quickly as possible. If the fruit sits too long, the quality of the oil begins to degrade. Once the bunches arrive, workers, often aided by conveyor belts, load them into enormous steaming chambers that loosen each small, oval-shaped fruit from its spiny host. From there, mechanical presses crush the fruit, releasing a thick, reddish liquid rich in valuable oils. At this stage, it might smell earthy or even slightly sweet, and it's known as crude palm oil. But that's not the end of the story. Modern refineries subject this raw product to bleaching, deodorizing, and other processes, transforming it into an odorless oil with a long shelf life, perfect for chocolate spreads, instant noodles, lipstick, or even biofuels. Few of us can avoid palm oil in our daily lives. Sometimes it's listed plainly on ingredient labels, but more often it hides behind terms like vegetable oil, palm olein, or even complicated chemical names ending in -ate. Each time you wash your hair, snack on cookies, or apply skincare products, there's a decent chance palm oil is lurking. This omnipresence has fueled its rise to become one of the most hotly debated crops of our time. Advocates say it's an answer to feeding a growing population, especially if we want to minimize total land used for crops. Critics fire back that entire ecosystems, and the communities that depend on them, shouldn't be traded away for corporate profit margins. Some condemn the industry as an environmental disaster wrapped in slick marketing. Others see it as a lifeline for developing economies, creating jobs and infrastructure where few alternatives exist. From an economic standpoint, the big winners of this trade are often multinational companies operating huge plantations in Indonesia, Malaysia, and expanding parts of Africa and Latin America. These corporations handle everything from planting seedlings to exporting refined oil, building near monopolies that can outcompete smaller producers. And with that consolidation comes rumors of shady dealings. Accusations surfaced about bribery, questionable land deals, or lobbying efforts that keep regulations lenient. Company spokespeople usually dismiss these stories as isolated incidents, but the swirl of suspicion never fully dissipates. Investigative journalists and non-governmental organizations have repeatedly reported cases where local communities claimed they were coerced or tricked into signing over communal lands. Legal battles can drag on for years, overshadowed by the relentless push to expand production and meet global demand. That expansion is tightly linked to deforestation. In places like Borneo or Sumatra, photos from decades past show vast, dense forests teeming with life. Modern satellite images reveal large patches replaced with orderly rows of palm trees. Environmental activists warn that such changes aren't just aesthetic. They disrupt entire food webs and release huge amounts of stored carbon into the atmosphere. Burning peatlands to clear space for plantations is especially notorious, as it sets off fires that can smolder underground for months, blanketing regions with haze and releasing staggering levels of carbon dioxide. Companies often claim they're adopting zero-burn policies and reforestation schemes, but skeptics question how well these pledges hold up on the ground. Headlines occasionally spotlight cases of plantations apparently violating their own no deforestation commitments, suggesting that not all is as green as marketing brochures might suggest. Labor practices present another layer of controversy. In some remote regions, workers have alleged they receive pay below minimum standards or that wages are manipulated based on unrealistic fruit harvest quotas. Others claim their identification documents are seized by employers, preventing them from leaving. Although company representatives typically refute these stories, calling them exaggerated or unrepresentative, investigations by human rights groups suggest a pattern that may stretch across multiple companies. Stories also persist about miners helping with dangerous tasks, fueling a sense that the industry's labor problems go beyond a few bad apples. This situation grows murkier when you factor in global competition. Plantations want to keep costs low to remain profitable, and stricter labor regulations can raise their bottom line. Critics argue this dynamic incentivizes corner-cutting on worker well-being, reinforcing a system that some have labeled exploitative. The tension extends beyond workers to include indigenous communities. For many of these groups, their livelihoods rely on hunting, gathering, or small-scale farming on ancestral lands. When palm oil plantations move in, often with the backing of local government or powerful investors, indigenous people might see the forests they depend on sold off or converted into neat rows of palms. Companies sometimes offer compensation or profit-sharing deals, but local leaders claim these agreements are not always fair or transparent. Legal documents might be in a language many community members don't read, or the deals may gloss over the long-term environmental impacts that come with industrial monocultures. The heartbreak of losing cultural ties to the land is difficult to put into financial terms, yet it's a recurring theme in regions experiencing rapid plantation expansion. Lawsuits continue to emerge, though legal victories for indigenous groups vary widely depending on the political climate and resources available. Hoping to bring some order to the chaos, voluntary certification schemes like the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil, RSPO, have gained traction. Their rules aim to curb reckless deforestation, enforce better labor standards, and engage local communities in decision-making. In an ideal world, palm oil bearing the RSPO label should be a safer choice for consumers wanting to avoid supporting harmful practices. However, real-world complications abound. Some producers see RSPO membership as a marketing tool, adopting the language of sustainability without fully transforming on-the-ground practices. Audits meant to catch violations can be inconsistent, and critics say there's insufficient follow-up when plantations break the rules. Nonetheless, defenders argue that certification is a start. The more companies commit to these standards, the more the industry slowly shifts toward accountability. Another dimension to consider is how palm oil influences global climate targets. Governments in Southeast Asia encourage palm-based biodiesel as a renewable energy source, touting it as a greener alternative to fossil fuels. But environmentalists question the net carbon benefit if forests are burned or drained to plant oil palms in the first place. The European Union, for example, has been phasing out certain forms of palm oil in biodiesel calculations, fueling trade disputes and accusations of protectionism. Meanwhile, other markets remain robust, and producers continue searching for new customers in fast-growing economies across Asia and Africa. Balancing climate goals with the economic importance of palm oil remains a delicate dance, one that's influenced by politics, lobbying, and shifting public sentiment. Hidden within these massive operations are smaller-scale farmers who cultivate just a few hectares. Collectively, they produce a sizable portion of the world's palm oil. For these smallholders, palm is a double-edged sword. On one side, it offers a steady income and a path out of poverty. On the other, rising costs for fertilizer, competition from giant plantations, and complicated certification requirements can make it hard to earn a fair profit. Cooperatives have sprung up in some regions, aiming to share knowledge and resources, like better seedlings or training on sustainable methods. Even so, bureaucratic hurdles remain, especially when smallholders want to prove their oil meets sustainability criteria to secure higher prices. This tug-of-war between empowerment and exploitation is emblematic of a broader theme in palm oil. It can be a vehicle for development or a magnet for abuse, depending on whose story you hear. Dive deeper, and you'll see how modern technology is transforming the industry at lightning speed. Drones equipped with multispectral cameras now hover above plantations, identifying nutrient deficiencies or pest infestations before they become serious. Automated sprinklers can deliver just the right amount of fertilizer or water to each tree row. Processing mills bristle with sensors that fine-tune temperature and pressure, extracting ever more oil from each kernel. These innovations promise to reduce waste, increase yields, and possibly limit the need for expanding plantation acreage. Yet critics argue that even if every plantation on Earth embraced perfect efficiency, the fundamental issues of habitat loss and labor ethics remain. Technology can help address symptoms, but might not fully solve the underlying dilemma of an industry built on monoculture. Any conversation about palm oil eventually circles back to consumer choices. Environmental advocates urge shoppers to read labels and avoid products containing palm oil, though in practice, that can be difficult, given the number of aliases and the sheer volume of goods that use it. Others suggest focusing on sustainably sourced palm oil, pressuring brands to prove they aren't tied to deforestation or abusive labor practices. This strategy has led some companies to adopt zero deforestation policies or to publish sourcing maps, claiming total traceability from plantation to store shelf. Skeptics wonder if these maps capture the full complexity, given the practice of mixing palm oil from various suppliers at the mill or refinery stage. Nonetheless, each wave of public pressure does force more transparency, inching the industry toward better oversight, albeit at a glacial pace. Climate change throws another wrench into the equation. Oil palms thrive in humid, tropical conditions, and if global weather patterns become more erratic, future yields could be threatened by droughts or floods. Some industry voices warn that climate shifts could push cultivation into new regions, potentially opening up more forests to clearing. Others foresee a scenario where pests or diseases proliferate in warming climates, creating a new set of challenges for producers already wrestling with complicated supply chains. Meanwhile, activists caution that planting additional palms in high-latitude zones might replace other sensitive ecosystems, simply shifting the problem instead of solving it. The specter of climate disruption underscores just how delicately balanced this whole system is, tied to global forces well beyond any single plantation's control. In response to these mounting pressures, some entrepreneurs and scientists are exploring alternatives. A handful of startups are tinkering with yeast strains or algae that can generate oils chemically similar to palms. If they can bring down production costs and scale up, lab-grown oil might someday displace at least a fraction of palm's market share. Others believe a shift to entirely different crops is the answer, but that raises its own concerns about land use, irrigation, or even farmer retraining. Like lab-grown meat, these solutions feel futuristic, promising a kinder impact on animals and ecosystems if they ever become mainstream. Yet transitioning an entire global industry worth tens of billions of dollars is no small feat, particularly when so many livelihoods, corporate profits, and government revenues depend on the status quo. Talking with people who live near these plantations offers a window into how complex this reality can be. Some families might appreciate the road improvements, schools, and clinics that companies have built in remote areas. Others lament the loss of traditional farming techniques or bemoan the changes in water quality and wildlife patterns. Younger generations might find stable work in the mills, while older ones recall when the region's rivers were teeming with fish and the forests echoed with animal calls. This patchwork of viewpoints highlights that palm oil isn't a simple villain or hero, more a giant, unstoppable force that revolutionizes local economies while also straining resources and local culture to their limits. Meanwhile, major brands pour resources into public relations campaigns, determined to reassure consumers. They release videos showing contented workers, advanced waste management systems, and reforestation initiatives framed as heroic. Environmental watchdogs respond with footage of displaced wildlife, dried-out peatlands, and interviews where people describe broken promises. Social media intensifies the conflict. A single viral post accusing a corporation of eco-destruction can rally thousands to boycott, prompting swift damage control. Some wonder if the truth lies somewhere in between, where improvements are real but overshadowed by deeply rooted structural problems that no rebranding can fix. So where does that leave the average person who wants to do the right thing? Some activists propose a near-complete boycott, hoping it will undermine irresponsible producers and pressure the entire sector to rethink itself. Others argue that a blanket boycott might push farmers into even more precarious situations and potentially shift destructive agricultural practices to other crops. Another branch of thought urges everyone to focus on certified sustainable palm oil, making it unprofitable for plantations that ignore ecological and social safeguards. Ultimately, individuals must decide which approach best aligns with their values and resources, recognizing that palm oil is part of an immensely tangled network of global trade, local livelihoods, and consumer appetites. With demand for edible oils rising and the world's population still growing, the palm oil juggernaut isn't likely to fade away anytime soon. Analysts predict that emerging markets in Asia and Africa will increase consumption, especially as more people move into urban centers and adopt diets heavy in processed foods. In countries like India and China, palm oil is already a staple cooking ingredient, prized for its affordability. Coupled with the push for biofuels in certain places, these trends maintain high prices on global markets, fueling further investment into plantations. Even when outside criticism flares up, the economic incentive to keep expanding can overshadow environmental or social concerns, unless government policies or consumer tastes shift dramatically. But signs of such shifts do exist. Some nations are introducing stricter legal frameworks on deforestation. Others are backing away from palm-based biofuels or imposing higher import taxes on unsustainable sources. Global campaigns urging responsible sourcing have grown more sophisticated, tracking supply chains with digital tools. Even large corporations, once dismissive of activism, increasingly declare commitments to ethical sourcing, though the effectiveness of these declarations varies widely. In effect, the conversation around palm oil has become a bellwether for how humanity might address the tension between immediate economic gain and long-term planetary stewardship. Stand on a plantation road at dawn, and you'll sense the scale of this tension firsthand. The sun lights up rows of palms dripping with morning dew, while workers begin their grueling routines. Gently sloping hills might reveal pockets of forest left intact, or occasionally, a wide canal built to drain peatland for the next wave of seedlings. It's a scene that can inspire admiration for human ingenuity and dismay over what's been lost. Each harvested fruit bunch represents a family's livelihood, a corporate profit margin, an environmental flashpoint, and a staple in countless kitchen cupboards around the globe. Few agricultural products carry so many intertwined stories in a single cluster of fruits. That complexity ripples through every discussion about the future. Some foresee a time when advanced agritech, along with robust certification, truly reduces deforestation and labor issues, transforming palm oil into a more sustainable resource. Others doubt whether these incremental changes can alter a system built around maximizing yields at the expense of natural habitats. And a growing faction believes that if we want real transformation, we need to reduce our consumption of highly processed foods in general, or pivot to lab-grown alternatives. Yet no single path emerges as obviously correct. Each one has economic, cultural, and ecological trade-offs. This uncertainty fuels a wave of experimentation, small pilot projects, new regulatory models, and grassroots movements that challenge big agribusiness to change its ways. In the midst of these debates, it's easy to forget how ordinary palm oil can seem in daily life. Most people who buy shampoo or cookies don't dwell on the raw materials behind them. And that's precisely what fosters this hidden empire of farmland, factories, shipping lanes, and corporate boardrooms. Palm oil's invisibility in consumer consciousness has been a cornerstone of its success. As more attention falls on the industry, whether through social media outcry or formal investigations, some expect a tipping point could arrive, one where public scrutiny reshapes not just consumer preferences, but also government policies and investment strategies. When or if that tipping point will manifest is still up for debate. What's certain, though, is that the status quo carries massive implications for both the planet's health and the lives of those who depend on palm oil's prosperity. In the background, the clock ticks on deforestation rates, species endangerment, and climate change impacts. Balancing these urgent concerns with the immediate needs of workers, farmers, and consumers is a monumental puzzle. Even if the industry's biggest players adopt more responsible approaches, that alone might not erase the social and environmental debts accumulated over decades. Repairing damaged landscapes, restoring wildlife corridors, and ensuring fair compensation for communities is no overnight task. Those who believe genuine progress is possible point to success stories: plantations that voluntarily restored peatlands, communities with equitable profit-sharing deals, or traceability systems so robust they can track each shipment back to a specific field. Though scattered and often overshadowed by troubling headlines, these stories hint at what could be achieved if there's enough political will, consumer demand, and financial backing. Whether these examples remain exceptions or grow into the new norm will depend on the collective choices of governments, corporations, and the public. Even then, it's an uphill climb, given the deeply entrenched power structures and the scope of money involved. To many observers, palm oil epitomizes our larger struggle with sustainable growth. It raises the question: how do we reconcile global development needs with the moral imperative to preserve ecosystems and respect human rights? Industries like palm oil, with their tentacles in so many products, highlight the complexity of modern life, where the quest for convenience, affordability, and profit often conflicts with the desire to protect nature and uphold fair labor practices. Can these goals coexist, or is our demand for palm oil inherently at odds with saving rainforests and uplifting local communities? The debate continues, fueled by new technologies, shifting markets, and vocal advocates on all sides. As we stand at this crossroads, it's clear that palm oil production will remain a force in the global economy for years to come. Breakthroughs in alternative oils or stricter regulations could reshape its influence, but for now, entire nations depend on it for exports, and countless consumers rely on its low cost. This tension underscores a fundamental truth: any large-scale change must be both ecologically sound and economically viable to truly endure. Otherwise, the cycle of exploitation and habitat loss risks spinning on, no matter how many well-intentioned reforms are announced or how many moral dilemmas trouble the public conscience. In the grand scheme of things, palm oil is more than a simple cooking ingredient or cosmetic component. It's a lens through which we can examine global priorities and contradictions. It reveals how easily ecosystems can be reconfigured when there's a financial incentive, and how hard it is to address the unintended consequences that follow. Yet it also shows how resourceful humanity can be, crafting advanced milling technologies, forging international certifications, and pushing scientific boundaries to explore synthetic alternatives. That creativity might be the industry's saving grace, provided it's directed toward meaningful solutions rather than shallow public relations. Ultimately, each person who learns about this story has a role to play. Whether it's shifting purchasing habits, joining campaigns, or simply staying informed, public sentiment does shape corporate and government agendas. When enough eyes focus on the same issue, ignoring it becomes nearly impossible. If we do see a tipping point in palm oil's trajectory, where deforestation halts, fair labor practices become standard, and entire value chains go transparent, it will be because of collective pressure and innovation. And that outcome would serve as an inspiring testament to our ability to correct course, even when the odds seem stacked in favor of destructive inertia. Until then, the mass production of palm oil keeps rolling forward, filling supermarket shelves and fueling debates about what kind of future we want. Will it evolve into a model of responsible agribusiness, or will it remain a symbol of unchecked exploitation? The path ahead is anything but straightforward. Each new law, certification, consumer shift, and technology will nudge the industry in one direction or another. Only by paying close attention and refusing to let complexity justify complacency can we hope to steer palm oil toward an outcome that honors both human dignity and the fragile balance of our shared environment.